If they build it, Rustic and Reclaimed will come and lovingly resurrect its bones and transform it into new lives. Southwestern Ontario has seen many large barns rise and fall over the last couple of hundred years. But at one old barn atop a hill outside of Caledonia, a family business takes the bones of structures that have represented Ontario's long farming tradition and creates new home decor.
Downstairs where the cows used to be is where we have our shop where we remanufacture with the materials that we've reclaimed.
For 9 years, Tanya and Steve Ribbink have been creating some popular items out of materials from disassembled barns.
Upstairs, we have a showroom and my office, which is a pretty cool office because everybody needs a bar and a big screen TV in their office and a beautiful mantle.
The idea to resurrect and remanufacture barn materials came about when Tanya's husband, Steve, had some downtime.
My husband, Steve, was into landscape construction, which is a seasonal job. So in the winter, he was always looking for something else to do. Grew up a Dutch farmer, so he always needs to be moving and active. A friend of his mentioned a barn that needed to come down in Smithville, so the two of them went and took down this barn. And I took the material and posted it on Kijiji, and it sold faster than any of us could believe.
That barn turned into 2 more barns, which turned into 6 more barns. And for 3 years, the Ribbings would barn the midnight oil while still working at full-time jobs. 9 years ago, they took the leap and made Rustic and Reclaimed their work passion. And the creations vary, with wine racks being among the most popular. In the past 10 to 12 years, Rustic and Reclaimed has taken down roughly 120 barns throughout southern Ontario within a 2-hour radius. Taking down a barn depends really on the barn, and sometimes it involves removing the foundation as well. And that's where the dismantling begins. The key to bringing down a barn is much like raising one. It takes methodology and tools, with everything driven by safety.
The great thing about barn beams is there's so many different kinds. There's hand-hewn, there's sawn. The dimensions vary across the board depending on the barn that it comes out of and the age of the barn.
Everything is taken off the walls. Barn doors, gates, closures, and windows removed. Anything in good condition, including hinges and doorknobs, is set aside. Much of the work is done by hand, with a hammer and a crowbar, in order to preserve as much material as possible and divert it from landfill. Once the outside cladding is removed and set aside, the roof comes down, and eventually, the frame of the barn itself. The materials are transported to Rustic and Reclaimed site, where pieces are sorted and relegated to their spot, some straight into the lumber kiln for drying.
So when he gets those beams and on the ground, onto the trailer and back to the shop, same process. There's a lot of sanding involved. Sometimes he takes wood from the ends of the beam and fills pockets if people don't want the pockets in their mantle. I think it's a neat place to hide your Easter egg.
Rustic and Reclaimed's own barn has long been reclaimed, repurposed. Where the dairy cows were once milked twice a day, now houses Steve's workshop, the hub of the business. And each item awaits its opportunity to be creatively remade, including one of the company's more popular items. The wine rack is made from barn rafters and is processed in the yard, taking out any nails and cut down to manageable length before going into Steve's shop. Taking a hole saw, holes are drilled to specifically fit wine bottles. From there, it gets sanded down to a fine finish. Barn wood is also used for the legs and feet to prevent the rack and its precious cargo from toppling over and crashing. Now, this wine rack is ready to join the other items on the showroom floor to entice both professional designers and those looking for the perfect gift.
The base of the log, where it butts out further, it might be a little gnarly looking to some people, makes a beautiful coffee table. The location that we have for Rustic and Reclaimed, we're so fortunate. We're in a barn that's been here for over a century, and it's actually the farm that Steve grew up in, and it used to be a dairy farm, so they no longer have cows, and we've been able to utilize the barn for our shop and our showroom. It's where we make everything, where we sell everything.
For this couple, Rustic and Reclaimed isn't just a business and entrepreneurship, it's about legacy.
One of the most gratifying parts of this job is knowing that the wood that we're taking out of these barns has been manufactured years ago, and we're remanufacturing it into something else and giving the wood new life. It's fascinating to think back to the days that these barns were built and some of the size of some of these trees. Like, we've come across some swing beams that are up to 3 feet tall in the center. So to know that these were manhandled and created just with human hands and simple tools, it's mind-blowing. And then just to run your hand over these pieces of wood, you're feeling a bit of history.
Many of Ontario's family farms have disappeared over the decades, but now they're loving markers. Those grand old barns that once housed animals and goods live on. And proudly made in Ontario.